All right, Austin, you're tweeting out the link so our viewers and listeners can join us. But we're back after some technical difficulties. Thank you, everybody, for waiting to get, thank you for waiting pretty much and bearing with us as we got through our technical different difficulties here. Um, Now we're having a little bit of a screen issue there. It has not been a easy day for us, and my camera looks like shit. It doesn't matter, Austin. Let's just get today's episode and live stream out of the way. First of all, welcome everybody to another Cheesesteaks in the 700 level live stream and podcast episodes. Since we're recording this, and we'll post it on all our platforms. But Austin, talking week 2 today, we're talking the Eagles 49ers. But before we get into that, any thoughts on last night's game between between Washington and New York?
Yeah, I mean, to me, one, Taylor Heineke looked pretty good. I mean, for what he is, he's showing them that they could win games with him. Not necessarily, going to probably take them to the promised land, but
Mm-hmm.
he could do justice. I think ideally, I know they've been kind of in the mix for Deshaun Watson, and Aaron Rodgers has been a name, so they are close to that one quarterback away from probably competing for it. But on the other side of the ball, I mean, the Giants are terrible. I mean, just terrible.
Yeah, there.
I understand Saquon, is coming off the torn ACL, but if you're that worried about him, and it's not like they were getting blown out, then don't start him. Like, don't play him on a short week.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really unfortunate to see what uh, Saquon is kind of has to deal with on a weekly basis because that team's not good. He has no offensive line, and I mean, the biggest takeaway for the Giants last night was that Daniel Jones actually looked decent for the most part. He had over 300 total yards. He had 100 yards on the ground. Daniel Jones looked good, but yeah, it's definitely rough for the 49er. I mean, for the Giants and for Saquon. But that was quite the Giants' way to lose that game. Um,
Yeah,
that was
I'm just
hilarious.
not convinced about Daniel Jones though.
I'm
I'm
not
really
either.
not.
No,
Like
me neither.
he's just he throws a decent deep ball, nothing crazy, but
Yeah,
like literally when they drafted him, I said he's Eli Manning, and Eli Manning to me really like his career has kind of just been overrated. And that's
yeah.
not even me as an Eagles fan saying that. That's me as a football fan. I understand he won 2 Super Bowls, but he wasn't one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, and that's what the
Mhm.
Hall of Fame is. But he's going to get in anyway, and that's a different rant.
Yeah. Let's get into let's get into the Eagles 49ers game. Though it is worth mentioning as we do that we are currently um, keeping track of the Phillies game against the Mets tonight. Phillies obviously are entering this game 3 games out of first place in the division and 2.5 games out of first place in the wild card. A lot riding on this series with the Mets. Currently in the third inning, the Phillies are up 1-0 with Zach Wheeler on the mound. So big series here for the Phillies, but Eagles 49ers, that's our discussion points here today. Austin, I guess, first of all, how are you feeling about the Eagles going in here on week 2 against this 49ers team?
I I feel pretty confident. I'm not even going to lie. I
Sure.
really do. I And part of it is Raheem Mostert is out, and we're going to talk about that. The other thing is Jason Verrett is also out. But
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I think they just have a shot to win the game, and that's all that matters at this point. I know a lot of people are counting them out, but I think Dylan, you and I have some good points as to why people just shouldn't count them out like that.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you look across the media landscape this week, and it really seems like everybody's really just picking the 49ers to win this game. And everybody's saying it's going to be close, but I truly think the Eagles have a shot to win this one. This is a 49ers team that's coming into Philadelphia beat up. They've been on the road now away from home for 2 weeks because they stayed, or a little over a week, maybe a week and a half, because they stayed in. West Virginia in between these two games. But yeah, this is a beat up 49ers team, a team that gave up 33 points to Lions last week. I know the Lions got a little lucky with turnovers and onside kicks, but this 49ers team is far from a juggernaut team. And at the end of the day, I'm just not a big believer that Jimmy Garoppolo can be a consistent enough quarterback to win week in and week out at the highest level. And as we've seen with this Eagles team last week, the Eagles beat a good, not a good, but I mean the Eagles beat down the Falcons pretty good last week. I know the Falcons aren't a good team, but uh, I don't care who you are, but to do what they did at the NFL level last week was impressive.
Yeah, I think for me, it's not necessarily like it wasn't necessarily like that they beat the Falcons because I mean, like you just mentioned, the Falcons aren't a good team.
Yeah.
It's that when it comes to the Falcons offense, they couldn't do anything. They started off the game very well. I mean, ran it down our throats,
Mm-hmm.
which was a little concerning, and we'll get into the matchups and stuff. But I mean, after the Eagles' defense got a hold of the Falcons, they kind of said, "We're not doing this." I mean, they couldn't do anything.
Yeah, and
Now,
I threw the
the,
stats up there for the Eagles' offenses, both teams' offenses and defense for our viewers. But and we'll go through them for those listening on the podcast later on. But go ahead.
no, the biggest difference is I think the 49ers offense is more balanced and has more weapons on it. I
Sure.
know, like I mentioned, Raheem Mostert
Yeah.
is out, and we'll go through the injuries too. But
Yeah.
I mean, Calvin Ridley isn't a joke. Kyle Pitts, was hyped to be this insane prospect, and they shut him down too. I know it was week one, and he's a rookie tight end, but still, the Eagles have notoriously been bad at covering the tight end, and now here we are. The Eagles played a very good defensive game against Calvin Ridley, Matt Ryan, and Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, absolutely. But as you said, this 49ers team has plenty of weapons, and we saw that last week. I mean, Elijah Mitchell, rookie out of Louisiana, had 19 carries for 104 yards. Debo Samuel had 9 for 189 and a touchdown. George Kittle, we all know what he can do. But yeah, they have so many guys who can beat you. And I mean, Brandon Ayuk didn't even have a catch last week, and he may be their most dangerous receiver.
He might not even play that often, by the way.
Really
We might get lucky. Yeah. Beat reporters are saying Kyle Shanahan is not happy with him.
interesting.
So I don't know if it's an attitude thing or what, but early reports are because he couldn't even beat out the third string guy now. Apparently, he
Yeah.
is, and that's why he didn't play much. He didn't have a catch because
Mm-hmm.
I started him in fantasy, and yeah.
All right. So how do you want to break this one down? Do you want to start Eagles offense versus San Francisco's defense, or
Let's
or the other way around?
we can start. Let's go injury report first, and then just jump right into the
Sure.
offense.
Sure.
The Eagles. I know everyone got worried. The Eagles' injury report was pretty extensive, but a lot of it was players with rest. Brandon Brooks,
Yep.
Fletcher Cox. Ertz did have that injury in the game, but it's not that. Apparently, it's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Graham, rest. Lane Johnson, rest. Kelsey, Sanders, Slay. Rodney McLeod was limited. Still, I think he's still trying to get back. The big one was Landon Dickerson was a full participant in practice, Dylan.
Okay. That's good. That's a nice little depth piece to have there on the offensive line.
Yeah, especially with Brandon Brooks. I know, it almost kind of seems like any game he could get hurt. But Landon Dickerson to just even be out there and practicing, that's a very good sign. JJ, I know our favorite receiver, JJ Ortega-Whiteside, limited in practice. And the other one that is actually pretty concerning, and you're hoping that he gets cleared, is Marcus Epps. I know he's not a big name guy, but with Rodney McLeod out, you got nobody back there besides Kayvon Wallace, maybe.
Yeah.
But he was a full participant in practice. I believe he still needs to be cleared to play.
Okay. And I am actually posting that injury report on our bottom line here. So if you want to move on to previewing the Eagles' offense
Sure.
versus San Francisco defense, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, with this injury report that you're putting up, it's actually very telling for the Eagles' offense. Jason Verrett out for season. Their best corner is out for the season with a torn ACL. Eric Armstead, who's probably their best defensive lineman, if not one of their best, is questionable as well. Greenlaw, linebacker, out with a groin injury. Javon Kinlaw, I believe, this is his second year.
Yeah.
He's questionable with the knee injury, and then Emmanuel Mosley is doubtful with the knee injury. The reason I went over the 49ers injury report minus Raheem Mostert is because this 49ers secondary is a disaster right now. They signed Dre Kirkpatrick and Josh Norman this week. They have Ambry Thomas, who's a rookie, and I don't want to mispronounce his name, but Lenore, who's also a rookie. Those are their best corners right now.
Yeah.
Two guys they signed off the street, and then two rookies. So Dylan, is this something the Eagles need to take advantage of, or like it's staring me in the face?
Yeah, I definitely think it's something the Eagles need to take advantage of, and they would be silly not to. I mean, we saw what this offense could do in the passing game last week against a not so strong San Francisco secondary. Atlanta secondary. I know San Francisco has a better secondary, but when you're beat up to this level, I mean that's big, and it's pretty much your backups aren't going to nearly be as good as your starters, and the Eagles, I think, have a wide receiver core to take advantage of that, and I've seen not enough, but I've seen a lot that I like out of Jalen Hurts, and I think he has the abilities to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think it's huge too because with Eric Armstead questionable, one that means he's not 100%, and two, it just means that this defensive line is going to have a tougher time with the Eagles' offensive line. So I think it matches up well there. And like you said, I mean, we saw this last week with a pretty mediocre at best secondary by the Falcons, and Nick Sirianni just attacked it. I mean, would I have liked to see a more balanced offense in the first half? Sure, but Nick Sirianni had a game plan. I mean, he knew what he wanted, and first drive, he went right down the field, touchdown Devonta Smith. So, I think the Eagles could take advantage of that. They also did allow 430 yards to the Lions last week. There's a little asterisk there for me. I mean, at a certain point, the 49ers were killing, and I mean killing, the Lions. So they kind of started playing dime defense and, kind of just playing not to lose. So yeah. I don't know how much you read into it, but part of me kind of says, you know what, they took their foot off the gas a little bit.
Sure. And I know I said I was going to get the injury report up, but it turned out to be just a little harder than I expected. It didn't really want to format correctly, but I'm sure if you're an Eagles fan watching this, you know where to find the injury report anyway. All right, so sorry, where did you leave off?
I briefly mentioned the Lions. I was talking about the Lions and how they allowed 430 yards to the Lions.
Yeah. So that's an interesting note because, like I said before, a lot of the lines last week was turnovers and onside kicks, actually. You look at the 49ers defensive stats there to know on our screen. Like you said, 430 points, 400 total yards allowed. But you look at the amount of plays they faced. They faced 84 plays last weekend out of the Falcons, and out of the Lions, and that's 5.12 yards per play, which is pretty strong. I mean, I know the Eagles only allowed 4.06, but when your opponent's rushed going 84 plays, 5.12 yards isn't bad to begin with, and then it just adds up obviously over time, especially at that rate of amount of plays. But you look at it even from an off from a passing standpoint, and they didn't actually give up all that many yards per attempt last week either. Uh, what? How many passing yards did we say they allowed? We didn't put it down there. Oh, there it is. 314 passing yards. But I believe the average for Jared Goff in the game was only around 5 or 6 yards. Which, if you're allowing 5 or 6 yards per passing play,
Yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah.
They kept the ball in front of them the entire game, allowed Jared Goff to be the check down guy that he is, and didn't get beat deep, which is something the Eagles are going to have to do if they're going to win this game. Um, and you look at that, they were really strong against the run last week. Didn't really let Swift or Williams get any major gains. So I think if the Eagles are going to win this game, it's going to come down to Jalen Hurts' ability to make the deep throw and test
Yeah.
that secondary that's banged up.
Yeah, that's a great point. We didn't really see it last week, and I don't know if that's a part of he didn't trust Jalen to throw it deep, or it just wasn't the game plan. I think Sirianni thought maybe they could just beat him with these moving around or the bubble screen, and then a middle of the field throw to Goddard or Ertz or Devonta. So I would like to see a couple shots deep, whether it's Quez in the slot or even Devonta go deep. Why not? But this secondary, it's funny. It's so funny that we're talking about taking advantage of a secondary because, our secondary has been taken advantage of for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
At least. Well, we had a brief pause in 2017, and then before that, it was taken advantage of as well. But I would like to see deep shots, not a whole lot, just to keep them honest, especially with a depleted secondary like we mentioned.
Sure.
So I'm interested. Like I said, I want to see Sirianni kind of attack this, maybe try to be a little balanced.
Yeah.
But with a secondary like this, he's got to be licking his chops with Devonta and Jalen Reagor and Quez wanted to just eat this secondary alive.
Yeah, and if there's one matchup I'm really in particularly looking at this week, not really a secondary matchup, but I'm looking at Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz versus Fred Warner in the middle of the field for the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
Last week against TJ Hawkinson, Warner got lit up. 6 targets to Hawkinson, or whoever the tight end on the field was at the time. 6 completions when Warner was covering their tight ends for 93 yards and a touchdown. Jared Goff had 158.3 quarterback rating when targeting Fred Warner last week.
I didn't even think about that because, usually the linebackers for the 49ers are pretty good, and Fred Warner is a very good player. But, especially with 2 tight ends like this, and if Zach Ertz does play, which I think, this hamstring doesn't seem to be that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Who's going to cover him? Fred Warner's got to cover one of them. That means the other one could be open if they do 2 tight end sets. But do you have any other thoughts on the Eagles offense?
The only other thing I think with the Eagles offense is this is going to be, like we said, a tough game to run the ball in. The 49ers were really good last week against the Lions. Now, the Lions are not a very good running team. Their offensive line is not very good at all, and they just struggle in terms of the power run. The Eagles, on the other hand, you look what they did against Atlanta last week, and they were phenomenal. Especially Jason Kelce there. He gets 1-2 blocks per run depending on the direction of the run. And I think that's going to be a big part. You're going to need the run game here to have a decent game because you don't want all the pressure on Hurts. I know Hurts is going to make some plays here and there, but you're going to have to let Hurts you're going to have to keep him balanced, I think, if you're going to win this game. And that means run the ball well. And I think with the offensive line the Eagles have, they can do that. But that San Francisco defensive line is the real business. And I guess the other thing that I'm looking here for is who Nick Bosa lines up against this week.
Yeah,
If he's on um, Lane Johnson, I feel good about that matchup. But I could definitely see the 49ers putting him on the other side and giving him to Jordan Mailata. And I mean, uh, to a point, I know Mailata got time last year and he played last week and he played well last week. But Nick Bosa is a whole different animal. This is a guy who can win Defensive Player of the Year any year. Uh,
yeah, when healthy.
yeah, and this is a guy who can average a sack per game when healthy. So I'm really interested to see how that offensive line holds up against a very good um, pass rush there for
Yeah,
the 49ers. I mean, 49ers had 10 pressures last week and 3 sacks. I know the Eagles' offensive line's much better than the Lions, but this isn't a defensive line or pass rush you want to take lightly.
yeah. Nick Bosa is going to be the big X factor for this San Francisco 49ers defense. Like you mentioned, against Jordan Mailata, he's going to have to go against him eventually. So
Yeah,
why not throw him into the fire now? And hopefully Nick tries to use his speed. And Jordan Mailata is a pretty quick guy, so hopefully he can keep him on the outside. But like you mentioned, Nick Bosa is a totally different animal, and I mean, they're just not going to put him over Lane.
yeah,
If they're smart, they're just going to put him over Jordan, and Jordan's going to have to fare for himself, or whether it's Kenny Gainwell or Miles or whoever back there to help chip Nick Bosa. But
yeah.
that's going to be, and you're going to see it early too.
Hmm.
I think if
Yep.
if Jordan's going to struggle, Nick Bosa, it's going to be early for Nick Bosa to take advantage of.
Yeah.
But
I
do you want to move on to the offense or
yeah,
defense at all?
yeah. Just the last note I would say is an injury that you definitely touched on there in the back with the injury report, but is worth noting when we talk about Fred Warner in the middle of that field is Dre Greenlaw. He had a great game last week. He had a pick six. Uh, he um, he kept Jared Goff to a 44.6 quarterback rating when uh, Goff was targeting whoever Greenlaw was covering. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so not having Dre Greenlaw in the middle of that field for the 49ers is big, especially if Fred Warner is going to be struggling against the pass again this week. And for the Eagles' sake, you hope he is. Yeah, let's go to the Eagles' offense here. I mean, Eagles' defense against this San Francisco offense. I mean, looking at the San Francisco offense last week, 41 points, 442 total yards in just 55 plays. So they averaged 8 yards per play. Compare that to the Eagles at 6.5, basically. Um, they threw the ball well. Jimmy Garoppolo got all but one pass. They had 311 passing yards and 131 yards on the ground, which isn't a ton, but considering they lost Raheem Mostert, didn't have Trey Sermon there last week, that's notable. Do we know if Sermon is going to play this week? Because I know he was a game day inactive last week.
Yeah, I would assume so. It's kind of hard for me to assume not that Trey Sermon isn't going to play. It definitely stunk for them that Raheem Mostert did get
What
hurt.
was there a reason given he didn't play last week?
I didn't see one, but there could have been one. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean this team, I'm like you said, Jimmy G actually had a very good game last week. Throwing the ball, he had a hit Debo for a deep ball. But this team is going to want to run the ball
Yeah,
first, even without Mostert,
yeah,
because what they do is they rely on the run to set up the pass. They like the play action, they like the motion, jet sweep, fake it or give it. Um, this team just it's very, very complex on
yeah,
offense and very reliant on
yeah.
the run.
Hmm.
So the key for this Eagles defense is, can you stop the run?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think Trey Sermon's going to be active this week, and I wouldn't be shocked if Trey Sermon leads the 49ers in yards or just in carries this week. Um, but if not, I mean Elijah Mitchell is a guy they have to be aware of. He had a great game last week against the Lions. He averaged what was it here? For some reason, I can't actually find his yards per carry. But 19 carries, 104 yards. You can do the math. It's it's pretty good there. And he actually last week attempted before even being touched. Uh, he averaged 3.4 yards, which I mean that is a significant amount of yards before you get touched. Because I mean you're getting 3 yards there. I mean by the time you get touched, you get 4.5, 5 yards. So he's getting almost a half a first down per carry.
Yeah.
And he got 4 first downs last week and had a touchdown, a big one. So he's worth noting. And then Trey Sermon, he's going to be the X factor. He's a big back who's going to be able to run through people.
Yeah.
Traditional north-south running back, has some finesse in him, but the Eagles are going to have to be strong in between the tackles this week.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is they're going to have to hit Jimmy G early.
Yes.
I mean, from what it seems, is he doesn't like getting hit. I mean, does not like getting hit. He's decently mobile. You know, like he's mobile enough that he can kind of get around. But I mean, I think if they hit him a couple times, he's going to get a little nervous. And like you said, they're going to have to try to rely on the pass or on the run.
Yeah.
And I mean, they did struggle. Mike Davis is a power back as well. Trey Sermon is a power back. And I mean, you saw Mike Davis bullied his way in the first half. And then what did they do? They gave it to Cordero Patterson, which could be Jermichael Hasty this week or whoever this week. And, you know, he could bust a couple runs. The Eagles are going to have to stop the run early. And I know they didn't do it last week, but Kyle Shanahan isn't going to be afraid to keep running the ball on this team.
No, he's not. And yeah, getting pressure on Garoppolo going to be huge. The Lions last week got almost no pressure on Garoppolo. He was only pressured 5 times, or about 18.5% of the snaps. If you're the Eagles, I mean, I think you need to be pressuring Garoppolo upwards of 25% of the snaps. You need to be in that backfield a ton, and I think they have the defensive line to do it. The defensive line played great last week, but you're going to have to pressure him a lot because Garoppolo, under pressure, Garoppolo is a totally different quarterback.
Yeah, they didn't finish a lot of sacks, which was frustrating, but they did pressure Matt Ryan a lot. And I think Matt Ryan's a little more mobile than Garoppolo is. But like you said, they need to get to Garoppolo early because, I mean, I think the second you do that, that's when he starts crumbling when it comes to the passing.
The other thing on the quarterbacks last week with Garoppolo, he was blitzed 14 times. And the Lions only got 5 pressures on them. The Eagles have to get home on those blitzes this week.
Yeah. And I mean, they didn't even really blitz much on the Falcons last week.
No, they haven't. I mean, the Eagles haven't blitzed much in almost a decade.
No, but I think Gannon trusts them enough. Does a lot of stunts. You know, at least like Jim Schwartz was just, I'm going to run straight at you, and that's going to be my pass rush. This is at least, you know, Brandon Graham's going to move to the inside, stuff like that. So it'll be more tricky, and it'll test this offensive line of the 49ers a lot more.
It's also worth mentioning that while Garoppolo will get the start this week, we're going to see some Trey Lance sprinkled in throughout the game. He got some plays last week against the Lions, threw his first career touchdown pass, and we'll see him this week. I don't know how much we'll see him. I don't know if it's going to be more than last week, but he'll be in there, and the Eagles will have to be aware of Trey Lance's game because the 49ers aren't going to be afraid to take shots if when Lance is in the game. If that's what basically what I'm saying is they're not going to play it safe when Lance is in the game. They're gonna go with their playbook.
I wouldn't be shocked if they took a little out of the Saints playbook with Taysom Hill against the Eagles, because when, not last year, but the year before, I believe it was the year before, Taysom Hill killed the Eagles. Yeah. I mean, like, killed the Eagles. And that was when it was Drew Brees and not, you know, I think, last year when we played him, Taysom Hill was the starting quarterback.
Yes.
So, you know, I think Trey Lance, they might take a little bit out of the Saints playbook with the Taysom Hill package, but not only that, we're not even mentioning probably their biggest pass target, and that's George Kittle, who
Yeah,
last year George Kittle had 15 catches for 183 yards and a touchdown. So I mean,
yeah,
and we only
I
won by 5.
yeah, and I'm looking at the Eagles' stats from last week, and I mean, you're not going to like the matchup no matter who you put on George Kittle, but Alex Singleton allowed 3 completions on 3 targets. Eric Wilson, 3 completions, 3 targets. Um, Jannard Avery, 1 completion on a target. TJ Edwards, 1 completion on a target. I mean, now the yards per completion weren't terrible. Uh, 7.7 is pretty bad. 5.3, 5 and 1, but I mean, you look at that. You look at the group of linebackers the Eagles have, and there's nobody you like
Yeah,
in the middle of the field to cover George Kittle. And with the receiving core that the 49ers have, you can't really afford to put on a double
Darius
team there.
Slay, yeah.
I mean, because you have to. I mean, if Brandon Ayuk plays this week, does Darius Slay get Ayuk or Samuel?
I think Samuel.
Did
He almost has to.
did Slay cover? I I didn't.
Yeah, he covered Debo last year.
Yeah, but I mean, last week did he cover Riley? Calvin
Yeah,
Ridley?
yeah, he covered Kevin Ridley.
Okay. I off the top of my head, I couldn't remember if the Eagles played
Yeah,
more
I think they played
matchup
zone, but
or
yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, George Kittle is going to get his regardless.
Yeah,
But
he's going to
the
get 7 to 10 receptions in this game for close to 100 plus yards or more.
Yeah, and you do bring up a good point. If Ayuk does play, he's easily the second when it comes to talent, the second best guy there, and he's probably better than Russell Gage is. So I mean, Jonathan Gannon does have a really tough task at hand here.
This is a tough one. I mean, Kittle, Samuel. If Ayuk plays, Ayuk is dangerous. Trent Sherfield is a good wide receiver,
Yeah.
and then
Um.
all their running backs have the ability to
Sure.
be part of that passing attack as well.
Sure. I mean, other than that, I think Debo. It's going to be interesting how they shut down Debo. They're going to have to really contain and make sure people don't get on around on the outside or overcommit and stuff like that. But do we want to get into our final prediction for the game?
Yeah,
Is there anything?
that's fine with me. I
I don't know
guess.
if you had anything else on the Eagles defense at all.
No, I'm looking at some of the advanced stats here, seeing if anything catches my eye. Nothing's really popping out to me. I guess the big one here would be just from a special teams perspective. The 49ers last week obviously struggled with the onside kick situation. While I don't hope the Eagles have any onside kick situations this week, um, I'd be looking to take advantage of
You,
any miscues of that. Try and enforce miscues on that San Francisco.
I
Robbie
mean,
Gold
Dylan,
missed a kick.
you could do a surprise onside kick like Andy Reid did.
You could. I mean, Sean Payton called one in the Super Bowl.
Oh, dude, the balls to do that.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to make some predictions here on this game, I mean, the 49ers right now sit, I still believe, as a 3-point favorite here.
Yeah,
And I talked to you, I told you this before we sat down, but this is the first time the Eagles are underdogs at home in September uh, since 2010.
which is weird because I would think this game's just a push.
Yeah,
Like I would think they would give it to the Eagles, and I think come Sunday, I mean it's a 3-point swing. I think come Sunday, about 11 o'clock, this game swings in the Eagles' favor because I think Eagles fans are going to start betting it.
I do think the game is going to get much much more. The spread's going to get closer. I could
Yeah,
see it getting down to about 2 or 1.5.
yeah, yeah. That's how I feel, and that's why I'm a little shocked it's 3 now. But with that being said, the Eagles are, like we mentioned, underdogs in this game, plus 142, and the 49ers are 3-point favorites. This is as of Friday. Um, I think the Eagles go in like 20, 28, 24, something like that.
28-24. Yeah, this is a tough one, isn't it? I mean, I really like what the Eagles did last week. It was a really great start to the season, without a doubt, and they showed a lot of promise, especially after what we saw in the preseason, which was basically nothing. Um, but this 49ers team is a whole different animal than the Falcons. It's kind of like, um, I don't know if people can tell on our live stream, but I'm wearing a Penn State sweatshirt, and tomorrow they face Auburn. Um, and like the big conversation with Auburn this week has been Auburn before this week played Akron, which is one of the worst teams in the FBS, and then Alabama State, who is a pretty bad FCS team as well. And they beat those two teams by a combined score of 122 to like 10.
Yeah.
And like that's great and all. They executed against a bad team, but when you go and you're facing a team that's on a whole different level, and I mean Penn State is tenfold the teams that Alabama State, and Akron are. It's a whole different game. Now, the 49ers aren't tenfold better than the Falcons, but the 49ers are a much better team than the Falcons. It's a much better coach team.
Yeah.
And I just, this is a really, in my gut, I want to say the Eagles, but my brain is telling me I think the 49ers win this one just because
That's fair.
I think they're a more complete team right now.
Sure.
I'm worried about the middle of the field for the Eagles, that linebacker group against the run game that the 49ers have, and George Kittle. George Kittle is the guy who can decide this game. If George Kittle gets,
I mean,
12,
they did shut down Kyle Pitts, by the way.
They did. And Kyle Pitts is talented, but how much of that was Kyle Pitts' first game in the NFL?
Yeah.
You're going up against Greg Kittle's been in the league how long now, and he's been a top 2 tight end for the last 5 years, or so. So like it's just so it's such a tough matchup.
Yeah.
And he burned them so bad last year in this linebacker group. I mean, the only way it got better was the fact that we don't have Nate Gary in the middle.
Nate Gary, yeah.
Middle there. So, man, I'm gonna say that
you're torn.
I'm very
really
torn. Just because I don't always like being a homer, and I'm trying to be objective here. I'm gonna I'm leaning 49ers here. I'm gonna say it's a push on the spread. I think 49ers win 30-27.
Yeah, that's why like I picked the Eagles 28. What did I say? 28-24 because I do think there's things they can take advantage of. You know, like the secondary is literally depleted. Yeah. I mean, literally depleted.
That'll be what I'm watching. Is if the Eagles can take advantage of these injuries early, I think they win. I mean, I love what I've seen out of Jalen Hurts, but at the same time, it's only what was last week career start number 4.
5. Yeah, 4. Well, yeah, he played 2 halves.
Yeah.
Like 1 half.
Exactly. So
4,
I mean, we've seen less than half a season out of Jalen Hurts overall in his career. Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback, I'm not a big believer in, but he's at worst a good game manager. Mm-hmm. I think it comes down to Jalen Hurts and this Eagles run game against the 49ers defensive line. Because Jalen Hurts was able to escape the pocket last week, extend plays a lot. 49ers aren't going to let him do that as much.
No, they're not. He's going to have to beat them with his arm, or Sirianni's going to scheme things, which, I mean, I think he's going to probably be able to do because, I mean, just looking at last week, you know, he had a game plan, and that's something Doug really, you know, we talked about post-game last time that Doug didn't really do. You know, Doug, I guess, you know, obviously he had a game plan, but it didn't seem structured like this. Mm-hmm. The other thing too, and we didn't even talk about it, is the Eagles got to be cleaner with the penalties.
Yeah, that was bad last week.
I mean, they would have killed the Falcons if they were clean. Like I know they did kill them, but I mean that game wouldn't have even be like that game would have been maybe 40 points.
Yeah. And what they didn't do good early last week, but did really good in the second half, they got to get off the field on third downs.
Hmm.
Can't let the 49ers keep extending drives. Um, the Falcons did it last week a lot in the first half. Eagles did a lot of bending but not breaking. The 49ers team, I don't think you're going to be able to bend and not break as much.
Yeah.
So you got to
Yeah.
get this team off the field for force some turnovers, and that's the success right there. Win in the trenches, obviously.
Hmm.
Win the turnover battle, and I think force Jimmy G to beat you.
Yeah.
You got to get this 49ers offense off balance.
Hmm. I couldn't agree more. They like we mentioned, they want to run the ball. They want to shove it down your throat, and their run scheme is going to do that. They're going to find ways to do it, whether it's Debo Samuel on a jet sweep or a bubble screen like Nick Sirianni did, as kind of acting like the run, or
Yeah,
just straight up Jermichael Hasty or whoever runs the ball up the middle, or Trey
absolutely.
Sermon. They're gonna find ways to run the ball. You have
Yeah.
to stop it early and pressure Jimmy G.
So just from an official betting standpoint, I looked it up. The Eagles, as underdogs of 1 to 3 points in the regular season or postseason, or their last 10 home games, are 4-6 overall and 4-6 against the spread. Um, but they are winners of 4 of their last 6 and 3 of their last 5.
Hmm.
So um,
Yeah,
it's pretty much a coin
a
toss
toss
there
up. Yeah,
from a
right.
historical betting standpoint.
Yeah,
But with that, I guess we'll get into our. I mean, you know what? Before we get into that and we get into our weekly picks, I'm actually going to pull up the Eagles 49ers prop bets, and I
sure.
guess we can give quick predictions on the prop bets here.
Yeah.
So give me 1 second to pull that up. And I'm going off FanDuel for anybody interested. All right, so anytime touchdown score for the Eagles, the top guy in the entire game, Miles Sanders at plus 115. Jalen Hurts plus 165. Devontae plus 200. Kenneth Gainwell plus 230. Goddard plus 240. I would put money on Goddard to get a touchdown
I
this game.
Yeah, I was gonna say if Ertz was healthy, Ertz would be a good one.
He's plus
Um,
350. And I mean, if we're talking about the prop bets overall, Greg Kittle at plus 140 seems like
yeah,
easy money.
George Kittle, yeah, yeah,
Sorry, yeah, I said
George Kittle,
George Kittle at plus
yeah,
140 is
yeah.
easy money.
You could take the shot on Ayuk if you think Ayuk's gonna play, but I mean,
He's
from
at
what
plus
honest,
230.
that's that's actually not as high as I thought. Like I thought it would be better than that because
JJ
like,
Arthega Whiteside plus
oh no.
20, 2,500.
Oh, you put that $10 on that and you watch it hit. Um, I'm trying to think who, dude. I almost won 100 and some dollars if Jalen Hurts had ran one in,
Yeah.
but
I mean, I won my big prop bet last week.
yeah,
So, I'm actually going to throw together my prop bet parlay here. So, for anytime touchdown score, I'm actually going to double up here and go Kittle and Goddard both score.
that's not bad.
I like the matchups for both
Yeah.
guys.
What's a passing yards?
Passing yards. Let me find it. All right, here we go. Plus, over under for Hertz 233.5.
233.
I would take the over.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a little low.
Garoppolo 254.5.
That's tough.
That I wouldn't touch that one to be honest.
Yeah, I'm
It's
not.
going to be
Yeah.
right around there.
Uh,
I think
I
it's
mean that's what Matt Ryan was, right?
he was a little bit low, but yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
going to be 250 to 275 for Garoppolo
Hmm.
because they're going to
Yeah.
pass the ball a ton.
Yeah, especially if they're losing, it's gonna be have to be closer to
But I'll take the
250.
over on 233 from Hertz.
Yeah.
If the Eagles are going to win this game, they're going to have to pass the ball.
Hmm.
Um, Jalen Hurts over under touchdown, 1.5 passing touchdowns.
Over.
Yeah. Um,
He's good for I think two. I think two's right about where he's gonna have.
Jalen Hurts interception, minus 140 for the over, plus 106 for the under.
It's just a interception.
Yeah.
I could see it.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. Like I could see a linebacker picking it or it gets tipped.
Sure. Hurts rushing yards 52.5.
Ooh.
I'd say
see
under.
it jumped from they're I don't think they're gonna allow him to run the ball. So
Miles Sanders 61.5. I'd say over.
that's that's a good line though. He had 70 last week.
Elijah Mitchell 57.5. I'm gonna say under because I think Sermon plays and he's the guy.
Yeah. Or there's too many. There's JaMychal Hasty, there's him and Sermon.
Yeah. That's true.
What's receiving yard? What's Devonta Smith receiving yards?
Here's a good one. Miles Sanders carries 13.5.
Oh, come on. I'm not touching that.
It's gonna be about 15. You're asking receiving yards?
Yeah.
Sanders 18.5, Goddard 37.5, Rager 34.5, Smith 50.5, Kittle 68.5. Take the over on Kittle.
Yeah. All the Eagles I wouldn't touch. I really wouldn't.
No.
But
no.
The reason we talked about Devonta
Goddard
week,
at 37.5. I like the over there.
Well, he had he only had 43 yards last week.
Sure.
That's the only reason, and we mentioned the matchup of Fred Warner, so that's why that's tough. I almost don't want to take it. I don't want to take any Eagle.
Do you want to know the 49ers? 68.5 Kittle, 59.5 Samuel, 10.5 for Mitchell. I would only touch Kittle off any of these.
Yeah. Debo had a great game last week, but I don't know if it carries into week 2.
Total receptions, Sanders 2.5, not touching. Goddard 3.5. I actually like the over for Goddard there. If you can't tell, I love Goddard.
I'm shivering.
I love Goddard, but I didn't start him in fantasy. I started Logan Thomas.
What was his?
3.5.
Okay.
Rager 3.5. Smith 3.5. Take the over on Smith.
Yeah,
somebody's gonna have to get these receptions.
Yeah, someone's gonna have to catch 5 to 7 balls again.
Kittle 5.5. Samuel 5.5. Mitchell 1.5.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders rushing plus receiving 77.5.
I'd take the over.
Yeah, I think 50 and 25. Or
yeah.
50 something and 20 something. We're not gonna go with those. Okay, and then the other one. Miles Sanders longest rush 14.5.
I don't touch any of those because running that's the hardest thing.
Yeah. And I guess the over under will quickly hit 49.5. I'm taking the over. I think this is in the 50s.
My score prediction would be over, so I guess I'll take the over.
All right. Well, that's that. We did 12
we have
bets.
3. Yeah, and we can do. And then you want to go to our game picks?
Yes, let's do that. These are we're each picking 3 games. We're going to do this every week. Each pick 3 games against the spread. We'll keep track from here on out, and then we'll post our straight up predictions on Twitter like we did last week. Last week Austin went 9-7 straight up. I went 10-6. So let's get into our picks against the spread this week in week 2, Austin. Our viewers online can see each of the spreads for each of the games this week. But you give your first game, I'll give my first game then.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with my first game. I'm gonna go with the Rams.
All right.
I think the Rams. Where is it? The
Rams minus 3.5 against the Colts.
Yeah. I mean, the Colts didn't look great. I really don't think they looked that great. Carson kind of looked like Carson.
Yeah, he did.
and the Rams offense looked pretty good.
He did.
So I think
He did.
I think the Rams are kind of I think the Rams have a good shot at taking care of business, and that's a pretty low, 3.5 is, I think they could win the touchdown to anywhere from a touchdown to probably 14 points.
Absolutely. All right, my first game here. I'm making sure my games uh, don't have the same as you. And I'm actually just picking my games as we do this. All right. I Let me double check the one spread here. I may have it wrong on our screen. If not, it's what I will take. Just give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, I have it wrong down here. So on our screen, I have it at Ravens -3.5. It's actually uh, Chiefs -3.5 here. Um, I have seemed to froze on um, my screen here, but you look good. So
Oh, thanks. You look good too. Oh, oh.
yeah, it's quite the picture of me here. So I'm actually just gonna hide my face because that's a bad thing. Um, where were we? Oh, picking my picks this week.
Yeah, you're up. Yeah.
So you picked the Rams first. I'm going to go with. Let's go with. Damn, a lot of good games. Um, is that right?
Yeah, pick one.
I actually got the Panthers Saints wrong here. But give me the Saints -3.5 against the Panthers.
Yeah, yeah. I was looking at that one. I think we talked about it earlier. My other one, I like that one a lot, to be honest. My next one, I'm gonna go with the actually the Broncos. I don't even think 6 points. I mean, the Houston Texans killed the Jaguars
Yeah,
last week, and let me tell you, the Broncos are a better team, even without Jerry Judy. They are a better team than the Jaguars and the Houston Texans. So give
yeah,
me the Broncos. I know 6 is a decent amount, but give me the Broncos because the Jags are that bad.
sure. All right. Give me give me the Patriots -6 against the Jets.
Yeah,
Not
Jets didn't look good.
not a
Jets
big
did
believer
not
in the
look
Jets
good.
team. I think Mac Jones looked good last week against a good Miami defense. And I think he's going to take a nice step forward in week 2 here. And I think Bill Belichick and the Patriots get their first one of the season here in week 2. And I think it's -6 right now. So I think they win by a touchdown. So that would even cover it here. So give me the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 6 is a decent amount. It's going to be interesting if Mac Jones is able to kind of just dominate this game unless they just run the ball
Yeah,
down their throat. But my next one, I think it's going to be the Bengals. I think this is going to be a little sneaky one. I think the Bengals are only 2.5,
yeah,
or the Bears are only 2.5 against the Bengals. Andy Dalton doesn't scare me
yeah,
at all.
yeah.
Um, I mean, Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon ran the ball all game,
Hmm.
all game last week.
He did.
So I think the Bengals. I think they could. I'm not necessarily win, but I think they could cover the 2.5.
Absolutely. And my third game is I'm actually going to go the Titans +6.5 against the Seahawks. I think this line's an overreaction to last week. Titans got their ass kicked from the Cardinals. Seahawks look good against the Colts. I don't think the Titans are as good as Titans are as bad as they looked last week. I think they bounced back strong this week, and I think the Seahawks play well. Um, I think they play well this week, and I wouldn't be shocked if they win. But I just don't know if they're a full touchdown better than the Titans. I think the Titans will bounce back strong this week and keep this game close.
Yeah, the Seahawks. I mean, you saw what the who the Titans play.
Last week the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, if they get pressure on Tannehill, I mean the Titans are done.
That
That was embarrassing.
that is the one thing. The the Titans offensive line last week was terrible.
Like horrendous. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that was. I haven't seen that bad.
That
Poor Ryan Tannehill there.
that being said, Seattle's secondary last year was vulnerable. It was
Mhm.
vulnerable somewhat last week as well. I think it'll be vulnerable again this week. I'm looking for a big week out of AJ Brown and Julio Jones. Um, and then
The,
not a go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say the other one I'm kind of like keeps coming to my eye is the Bills -3 against the Dolphins. I think. I mean,
A
that was a tough game against the Steelers,
bounce
but
back week for the Bills.
yeah, I think it's a bounce back week for the Bills. And I just not convinced about Tua yet.
Not
I'm
convinced
really
about
not.
Tua, and that Bills defense is a much better defense than the Patriots defense.
Yes.
And it's wrong on our screen here, but it's actually Panthers plus 3.5. That is my, if I'm betting this week and I'm sprinkling in some money lines on some parlays, I'm picking the Panthers this week. Why? Because that Saints team, the defense has a couple of two stars out with COVID. They have a bunch of coaches missing, right? And
Yeah.
I know the Saints looked really good last week against the Packers. It's not going to be like that every week. If the Saints win this by a blowout, I wouldn't be shocked. But you look at the COVID situation for the Saints, they're still away from home. I can see a scenario where the Panthers pull off a win.
I could. I mean, a lot of the coaches were assistant coaches, and one was a nutrition
Yeah.
like specialist or something. So it wasn't like anything. It was like Sean Payton. But Dylan, are you factoring in that Jameis Winston did have LASIK surgery this
Oh,
offseason,
I mean,
and then throws for 5 touchdowns?
5 touchdowns on less than 150 yards.
I can't believe that, dude.
And I'm the one
I
who
can't
traded him
believe
to
it.
you in fantasy this year.
Yeah, and then guess who's starting him this week?
Yeah, well, I traded him to you with the conditional thing. So I guess you're going to be owing somebody a second round pick if he keeps this up.
Nah. He'll come back. He'll have it. Remember, he had 30 touchdowns and 30 picks, so he'll come back. I just need once Trey Lance comes in, Jameis he's gonna bump lower than the 15th quarterback
Sure.
or whatever it was.
And the last thing before we wrap this up, there's two massive lines this week. Browns -13 against the Texans, Tampa Bay -12.5 against the Falcons. Do you see either of those teams covering these lines?
Maybe the Texans. Texans, like I know the Jags are a bad team, but 13's a lot.
It is.
And, like the problem is Tampa Bay is 20 times better than the Browns.
Yeah.
And they're very similar lines. So
Yeah.
Texans put up points last week. You know, like
Tyrod's
hard to
never
look
been a
past
bad
that.
quarterback. Tyrod's always been average.
no, he's the worst luck. He's the worst luck in NFL history, I think.
Well, I picked him up I drafted him in Dynasty last year as my number 3 quarterback. And I drafted Herbert as well in the rookie draft.
Oh, thank God.
Because it was a 2 quarterback league. So he was my third or fourth
Okay.
quarterback. And then Herbert, he got hurt. Herbert came in. Herbert led me to a Dynasty championship. This year, I don't have Tyrod, but I have David Mills on my bench, on my taxi squad. and so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, I got lucky. A person dropped Justin Herbert last year in the Dynasty League, and then ironically, I ended up trading him back to the same guy this past off season because I wanted Antonio Gibson. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will call it a night then. Thank you everybody for listening to the Cheesesteaks in the center level. If you're listening to us, if you're watching us live on YouTube, thanks for watching us on YouTube again. We're going to be, I think, going forward, doing every podcast live on YouTube and then posting it and spreading it on the interwebs as a podcast as well. So thank you everybody for listening or watching, and go Birds. We will not have a recap episode this week. I will not be home. I will not be at the game either, unfortunately. But yeah, so no recap episode on Sunday. But we'll have a podcast up on Monday or Tuesday to recap the Eagles game and look forward to week 3, as well as talking about, I guess, any Phillies or Flyers doings or Sixers doings, because I mean, it does now seem that Ben Simmons is going to be entering the season as a 76er.
Who knows
Um, but yeah,
if
and
he shows up?
yeah, and as we end this episode here, Phillies are up 2-1 on the Mets in the sixth inning, thanks to a Brad Miller home run.
Bamboo Brad, go Birds.
Bryce for MVP, go Birds.